Good morning, Denise Dryden. I'm here back in Bainbridge. The harbor's right down below me, and I was going to go out in the downtown area, but they're putting Christmas lights up today, and there's trucks and dogs and people all over the place. So I'm down in this little sort of courtyard out in the middle of town, and they have free Wi-Fi in this town as long as you're in the middle of Winslow, which is wonderful. So anyway, I got a little lost there. I've been on the road for the last week, 18 hours of driving, so I'm a little tired this morning, so bear with me, and we're going to talk about reframing the family with compassion. So this is the second part of a series on when we're sensitives and we're going into the holidays, right? What are we going to do with that? So here are some tools and some approaches. So today we want to talk about reframing. And I want to just start with first the concept of a sensitive. So if you don't know what that is, look it up. HSP, highly sensitive, means that they take on a lot more information, a lot more data than about 80% of the population. Okay, so we have a highly reactive, highly sensitive, highly empathic, highly aware individual. And what I want to present today is that whenever we have a sensitive child, usually that child needs what I'm going to call the navigator, right? It's different than being a parent. It's somebody who says, I get that there are parts of this world that are really difficult, right? to see, to understand, to trust, because they react to emotions. They react to emotions in rooms, large crowds, large sounds, tastes, texture, all of that. So what we need is a navigator. We need someone who says, yeah, take your time. Go ahead and touch that. Yeah, it's cold. And we do that when they're babies, and we do that when they grow up, and we help them sort of, like the word I would use, navigate through a world that's very foreign to them and very overwhelming. So when we have a family system that has a navigator, it makes sense to me that that navigator and that child end up in some sort of a really tight codependent relationship, which is like, I need you to help me figure out life. And so the child leans back into the mom or the dad, and the mom or the dad hovers because they see where this kiddo flounders. They see where they struggle. They're there all the time to help sort of navigate through the obstacles of the world. So it can be codependent, and it can grow up into, I've learned my whole life that when I'm upset, my mother's the one who calms me down, or my father, or my brother. And I'm not sure how to do life without that person. We also can have families, systems where you're born into a family, even though there's a genetic hereditary propensity towards sensitivity in the family system, where you have adults in your life that don't know that they're sensitive, and they're not navigators. They're not helping you. They're actually sometimes even making it worse, because they're not paying attention to when you get overwhelmed. They're not seeing the same thing you're seeing. And sometimes, whether it's impatience or sheer number of kids, like some of us who grew up in the baby boom era, it's just overwhelm on the parents' behalf, and they're not available to be a navigator, right? So then there's this secondary codependence relationship where you're just pissed off all the time because the world does not make sense to you, and you're trying to understand why things hurt you, and you don't see that happening anyplace else. Or what you're reacting to something doesn't necessarily have to be hurt. A friend of mine, Bevan, talks about rejection. It's sort of like, I see the world, but then the world confirms back to me that's not what it is. And you're going, I have no clue. So sometimes anger, sometimes anxiety, sometimes resentment, sometimes abandonment. These are things that come up when we're raised in a house without a really good navigator. So the reason I'm bringing this up is a lot of us, I want to wake up the population and say, so do you have a sensitive in your family? Are you a sensitive? Are you a navigator? Have you stepped into that role yet? And then those are the first primary questions, right? And then now, as we go into really difficult periods of time in our Western culture, where all these holidays and traveling and expectations, that's when the navigator really needs to step in. So last week I talked about boots on the ground, which is how to be a present, secure navigator, parent to a sensitive child, to yourself. And I want to take that a little bit further today, which is, I want to call it out loud that sensitives have a tendency to be manipulative. And they're manipulative because they're looking at the outer world as things coming at them all the time. And they learn pretty easily that when things come at them, they dodge, they shift, they move them around, and so they play. Like, if I do that over there, then that goes past me and it doesn't affect me. So they learn to be little manipulators of people, emotions, things, places, all of that. And in that manipulation, it can be very disingenuous, because what we're doing is we're trying to get our needs met in a world that doesn't understand what we need. So manipulation is going to come up in the sensitive, and what we want to do is address who do you lean on? Who's your support system? And then whether it's yourself, right? and how well do you understand what you need? And then how well do you move through environments and not step on toes and not manipulate others so that they get their feelings hurt, and sort of, it just is a big cluster, right, during the holidays. So when we're talking about navigators, what I want you to do is just pause for a minute, and I want to look at this concept of reframing. So reframing to me is like you take you take a box of puzzle pieces, or like in my case, 22 boxes of books when I moved. And then you sort of dump them all out and you go, so if I could arrange these any way that I need to in order to understand them, how would I do that? So if it's a puzzle piece, you put all the reds over there, or you put all the borders over here, or you start in the center and you start to build your life the way you need it to, right? And so reframing with compassion is saying, oh, I may not have had a navigator, so I'm going to need to be my own navigator. Oh, people react to me when I manipulate. So how do I manipulate the environment for my own security and safety without impacting others or approaching or appearing disingenuous? So knowing that this navigational, manipulation, reframing, they're all interconnected. And having an awareness of that makes a tremendous difference. So reframing for the families, what I want to do is start with, we're on Sunday. We're in the last November of 2017. We've just finished this 4-day Thanksgiving weekend. What did you notice? Did you gather with others? Did you isolate and stay by yourself? Did you initiate the gathering, or did you go as part of an expectation? What was that like for you? So ask these questions, like, what actually were these last 4 days or 5 days or 6 days, depending on when you traveled? What were they like for you? What worked? What didn't work? What would you like to do differently? And so what we want to do is take all of those pieces of the holiday weekend and let's just dump them out and put them on the ground in front of us, right? And go, so like, who saw you? Who paid attention to you? Who didn't? Who completely ignored you? Who did you want to go step next to and sit with and visit with? And who did you avoid? What rooms did you avoid? What people did you avoid? What things caught your attention and had you step in? And then put them in places where we can work on them and play with them, right? So there are also questions like, who are the givers? Who are the ones who are always giving? Who are the takers? And start to watch what happens within your own body when you sort of put them in these little categories and start playing with them. Not from a position of right or wrong or good or bad. We're just putting them, it's just information. We're putting them in a pile right now, right? And we're going to look at them. And then we want to get curious. And we want to use some of our own, intuitive clarity and go like, so that's really interesting. There's this cluster of 3 or 4 people that I go do all of this holiday stuff because I like hanging out with those guys. And I found that I didn't spend as much time with them as I want to. Good information. Compassionate, like, oh, that's why I go. That's what I want to do. And then there are going to be those people that we avoid and we don't want to sit next to, and we don't want to get stuck in the kitchen talking to them. Why? Is it that they don't stop talking? That they talk about themselves? That they judge you? That they, fill in the blanks. We all have holiday stories, right? Find out why you don't like hanging out with them and what you did to avoid them. Or even how long you got stuck with them and what did that feel like? So because we manipulate the world, because we feel things and we see things, and we put these stories together and we start to shift them around, own the story. Reframe it the way you want to. So as we go into this Thanksgiving, into December, into the beginning of, I think there's 75 international holidays in 6 weeks. So know that regardless of your culture, regardless of your faith, regardless of your family system, there's going to be times where we're going to gather. And you can choose to do that, or you can choose to separate, or you can choose to set it up the way that you want. Being able to navigate in and out of conversations, being able to choose what parts of the house, what parts of the schedule work for you from a reframing position is going to be really important. So take these last 4 days, find out what worked for you and what didn't work. Find out what you want more of. Find out what you want less of. And if you're a navigator for a child or a teen or even a young adult, watch them. Watch how they navigate. Watch how they create their systems. Watch what works for them. So I'll give you an example. I drove to Boise and spent Thanksgiving with my youngest daughter and her boyfriend and a huge German Shepherd who's adorable, and our family cat that we've had for 14 years that is now hers. It was just this tiny little bundle of 4 sensitive souls plus me, 5. So what we did was we hiked, and we decided, well, I don't care what time we eat. Let's eat in the late afternoon, in the evening. Let's call people when we want to. Let's go outside. Let's cook the bird outside in the barbecue. And sort of designed it exactly the way it worked for each of us. And my experience was that from a reframe perspective, I could go into that saying, woe is me. I'm not with my oldest daughter. My son's across the country. I wish there were more people, which would be the old busy sort of taskmaster side of me, or the mom that misses her kids, right? Or I can just drop into feeling what it's like to be in a small gathering during the holidays with intentional people. And I noticed that my adrenaline was down, that I was less anxious. I wasn't the taskmaster in the kitchen. Everything flowed. Everything was seen. Everything was noticed. And I think it's the very first Thanksgiving that I have come out of a cooking sort of barrage. We still did all of the cooking, right? Because that's my favorite part. And it's the same with my daughter and her boyfriend. I'm not exhausted. I didn't overeat. I didn't overindulge. I came out balanced and in touch with myself, and I navigated myself through that. So this is just an example of what happens when we have the ability to dump it all out, move it around in the pieces we want, put our own perspectives on it with compassion, like, yeah, I just never liked hanging out with this particular relative, and I noticed that he doesn't really miss me when I don't go talk to him, so I'm just going to navigate in and around him and take care of myself. That's the most beautiful part of the reframing, is knowing what you can do to serve yourself and what you can pass on. So these are the kind of things that I talk about. Right now I'm working with several families as they're navigating through the holidays, visiting their kids in program, having their kids transition home, looking at blended families. I mean, there's just so much to work on. So if this is something that you are attracted to, if you understand my language and you think that I can help, give me a call. I work over the phone, so call me, let's have a cup of tea, and let's see if there's some coaching that you'd like to do. So you can find me on DeniseDrydenCoaching.com. Have a wonderful rest of November, and get ready for December. It's going to be a blast. Take care. Bye-bye.